Yeah, I guess that's 7:30 enough. We're close enough. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Who's got first blood this morning? I don't see anybody pulling that trigger yet, but we are live, and we're going to talk about the Supreme Court decision on the razor wire at the U.S.-Mexican border. Because, hey, it's Taco Tuesday, baby. And good morning. I see Fish and Golf drew first blood, and I'm proud of you, brother. I appreciate you. And Jen DF is joining us again this morning. I haven't seen you in a hot minute, sweetheart. Missed you, frankly. And there's Pit Danny. Ooh, raw, baby. Ooh, raw. So I got at least one veteran in the chat already. That's a good thing. Whoo! There is some shit going on, guys. And it's making me a little nervous. Hey, Megan says good morning from the Wilbanks, Mom and the boys. Hey, boys. I'll try to keep the F-bombs to a minimum this morning, but given the topic, it might be tricky. Tim Lowry opens with, good morning, SCOTUS sucks. Yeah, Barrett is an offender on this one. I mean, we expect Roberts to be a squishy shit heel and to basically betray us to the enemy, but I was never a huge fan of Barrett, but I had higher expectations for her. I mean, come on now. But she's not interested in the safety of your children, or hers for that matter. And I'll explain that in a little more detail as we go forward. So I'm taking this first article from CNN because, wow, do I want to know what their take is on this. The Supreme Court allows Biden administration to remove razor wire on U.S.-Mexico border in 5-4 vote. Gee, I wonder who the 5 were. Oh, my God. Okay. I'm going to say as a general rule, whatever Thomas says, I'm pretty much good with. Right? I mean, that brother is basically Thomas Sowell with a black robe. I'm good with that. So, the Supreme Court is allowing U.S. Border Patrol agents to remove razor wire deployed by Texas GOP Governor Greg Abbott's security initiative at the U.S.-Mexico border while the state's legal challenge to the practice plays out. So, a little bit of background. Here's what's going on. We have an unprecedented, and I know most of you guys are aware of this, but let's just kind of put it all in a nice little bundle here so we can unpack it better. Tim Lowry says, I bet Thomas knows what a woman is, too. Boy, I bet you he do. I bet you he do. So, what we've got going on, we have got an absolutely unprecedented level of immigration. Well, they call it immigration. I detest that use of phrase, that use of term. It is a hostile foreign invasion. The people pouring across the U.S.-Mexican border are not all Mexicans. They're primarily military-aged males from other than Mexico. You got a lot of South American countries in that mix, but you got a lot of Middle Eastern countries in that mix too, right? So there are 100% absolutely foreign terrorists who are using the immigration crisis as an entry point to access the United States interior. That's happening. The Biden administration and the DNC have been vocally pro-illegal immigration. Now, I've said before, I hate that phrase, illegal immigration, and here's why. It's a gross abuse of the language, right? Megan says the boys are in school now, so F-bombs away. And frankly, I'm going to be a little more careful with the F. I'm pretty good about not dropping too many F-bombs unless it gets real rough, unless we're talking about some real heavy shit. But I'm trying to be a little more responsible with my language because my 13-year-old has started wanting to watch the show. She wants to understand what's going on. I'll throw you a little anecdote later in the show if I think about it. Vera story. There, it's on a sticky note. Let's hope we get to that later. So while all this is going on, hey, Sergeant Major joined us from X. Good to see you this morning, Granddad. Appreciate you helping us grow on that channel as well. As these hostile foreign invaders are coming across the border, and it's being referred to as illegal immigration, the reason that turn of phrase is incorrect is immigration is a specific term of art, right? Immigration, the word means to go through the legal process of expatriating one country and moving to another country to become a permanent resident. And notice I didn't use the word citizenship in there anywhere, right? You are expatriating one country and becoming a permanent resident of another. That, as long as you go through the legal process, satisfies the definition legally of the term immigration. To expatriate one country does not necessarily entail removing your citizenship, right? Now, little bit of an expansion of the term of art, right? Resident versus citizen. You can be a permanent resident for a not permanent period of time. A good example, you're here on a student visa. The expectation is that your student visa will carry you for 4 years. So you are permanently in residence in the United States during that period of 4 years, but not pursuing citizenship. And that's cool. You want to come here and study at one of our wonderful universities? Well, you missed the boat by about 50 years, but legally, that option's available to you. That's what immigration is, right? Expatriating one country, a host nation, to establish residence in another. Now, another example to codify the understanding of the legal term of art, permanent resident. I live in Georgia. I am a permanent resident of the state of Georgia. Now, I was previously a permanent resident of the state of Georgia and then moved. Right? As a kid, we moved to New England, and then later on, I joined the Army and I moved to Missouri and to California and to Texas and to Hawaii and to Afghanistan and Kyrgyzstan and Kuwait and just all over the fucking world. During those periods, I was still a permanent resident of the state of Georgia, legally, right? Maintained a Georgia driver's license, Georgia tags on my pick-em-up truck for most of those positions while I was in California and while I was in Texas. I did change my driver's license and my tag in Hawaii for a number of reasons, and that was a pain in the ass, and I changed them back as soon as I got back to Georgia. But being a permanent resident doesn't mean that you're there forever. It means that you are there primarily and as your, essentially your legal base of operation for the purposes of your tabulation in the census, for the purpose of the tabulation of your state income taxes, various tax liabilities, etc. Right? So, when you start talking about people coming across the border illegally, if you are crossing a border illegal, then what you are legally is not an immigrant. You are 100% not an immigrant. So there's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. The lefties like to say a person cannot be illegal. And hey, I'll grant you that. You're right. A person cannot be illegal. It's not illegal to be a person. However, we do have a word for people who commit illegal acts, and that word is criminal. Now, presumption of innocence, fair enough. You're not a criminal yet until you've been convicted in a court of law. Part of what's happening with these hostile foreign invaders coming across the southern border is they're being handed gift cards for $3,000, assigned a court date to adjudicate their case, and then handed a smartphone that the government pays for so that they have a calendar so they know when their court date is. This is the excuse on paper, so they know when the court date is on the calendar, they know what time it is on the day of, and they can be contacted by the government. And of course, what they're doing with that, they're posting TikToks. The U.S. federal government is required by the Constitution to secure the border. And they're not failing to do that, right? It is not the case that the hostile foreign invasion crisis is overwhelming the ability of the U.S. government and the U.S. Army and the U.S. National Guards, well, Texas National Guard. It's not the case that these immigrants, that these criminals, that these hostile foreign invaders are overwhelming our ability to repel the invading force. So the government is not failing in its duty, right? The Biden administration is not derelict in its duty. And as I'm about to show more evidence for this statement, what's happening is they are intentionally and actively facilitating the hostile foreign invasion of the nation. They are actively not just complicit, but facilitating the invasion. There are some reasons for this. I was talking to a buddy of mine yesterday, and he went down the rabbit hole a little bit on the voter ID stuff. So this is a bit of a tangent, but I promise it ties back in and it's important. So you remember back in 2020 especially, there was this big hoopla about voter ID. And the Democrats like to say, oh, well, voter ID is racist because black people are stupid and they don't know how to go get IDs. And a lot of us on the right that are all for voter ID said, what? Yeah, black people, they're poor and stupid. They can't get IDs. So voter ID laws are racist. What? Okay, let me explain you something about how ID works in this country, right? Black or white, I don't care. You got, as far as this particular issue is concerned, you got two basic categories of people, right? I don't care what color or whatever. You got two basic categories of people. You got decent, law-abiding, tax-paying American citizens who have an ID because they have a driver's license so they can drive a car legally. They have to use that ID to get their insurance, right? That ID was part of what was required in their various background checks and confirmations, etc., to secure gainful employment, right? They have an ID for all the reasons, right? It's disgusting how much shit you'd have to have an ID for in this country. But those of us who try to stay within the confines of the law, we have IDs. Those of us who are productive, law-abiding citizens, we have IDs. And, quick aside, the only states in which it costs money to get a basic government-issued ID are states like New York and California, where it's, I think the last time I looked, it was $42 and $58 for somebody to get an ID, right? So the states where the voting majority opposes voter ID on the theoretical basis that it is racist because black people are too broke and stupid to get an ID, they're the ones that charge money. They go out of their way to make it more difficult for any person generally to get an ID by imposing a fee on it. So, what's the second type of person, you might ask? Well, those are your bums. Those are your habitual welfare broodmares and trough-feeding scum leeches that we could probably all do without. And they're the ones without ID, right? Fuck no! Help you understand something. Like I just finished saying, it is disgusting in this country how many things you have to have an ID for. But you're going to tell me, you're going to come at me with this argument that it's racist to require voter ID because black people are too dumb and broke to get one. Black, white, right, or wrong, the fact is, if you're the kind of person that doesn't have a job, lives off the welfare state, you have to have an ID to buy liquor, to use your EBT card, right? To get a bank account so you can take an Uber down to the flippin' Quickie Mart and buy fudge rounds with your food stamps. You have to have an ID to engage in all those federal programs. Right, and this is kind of the rabbit hole that my buddy went down, getting into. See, one of the things that they're trying to do is bring all these immigrants in and get them to vote. And I had to explain it to him that's very surface. On the surface of it, it looks like there's a plan to eventually. But I don't think we're going to have... I'm not saying I don't think criminal aliens will vote illegally in the upcoming election. I'm sure there will be some of that, right? But I don't think we're going to find ourselves in a predicament where the criminal aliens have been somehow awarded the actual legal right to vote in the U.S. general election by the time the general rolls around this year. However, 2020 wasn't all that long ago. And 2020 and 2030 ain't that far away. Here's the real problem. They're shipping these criminal aliens to places like California. They're moving them around the country, right? You're hearing concerns out of New York where Mayor Eric Adams said this issue will destroy this state. But there's something important that you have to understand. this issue is ballooning the populations of blue states. That's very intentional. Current estimates tell us that somewhere between 6 and 9 of the electoral college votes enjoyed by the state of California are the result of their illegal alien population. Some of y'all may remember this. This was a big deal back in 2020. The census was getting ready to happen. Well, 2019, really. So 2020 was a census year. It's every 10 years, right? 2019, Donald Trump and the Republicans moved to try and have the question of citizenship included on the census, and the Democrats fought that tooth and nail. I suspect that if the citizenship question had made it to the census, California would have lost somewhere between 5 and 10 electoral college votes. And that's why they fought so hard to keep it, right? You pump 1 million or more, or millions of criminal aliens into blue states, and all of a sudden, the electoral college map looks very different. Because your number of representatives in the House and your number of electoral college votes are apportioned by the census. So California gets to use more U.S. tax money because they have more people in their state. That is one of the key differences, one of the key problems, right? Now, it's true that the hostile foreign invaders soaking up all the hotel rooms and high schools, right? I'm sure y'all read the headlines that New York was shutting down high schools and using those buildings to house criminal aliens. So as much as all that's happening and they're giving them free health insurance and food and cell phones and just fucking money, the real play is to take control of the Electoral College, to take permanent, irreparable control of the Electoral College. Here to Lurk says it's hard to believe that keeping non-citizens from voting is even an argument. This ain't complicated. If a non-citizen, a person who still has significant ties to a foreign country, is allowed to vote in this country, then the thing that they're going to vote for, and you can't blame them, the thing that they're going to vote for is whatever helps their people back home. And hey, I'm all for you, brother. You need to do something to help your people back home, that's fine. But when that includes taking money out of my pocket and food out of my baby's mouths, you can go start a 12 gauge for all I care. You don't get to put your fucking hand in my pocket. That's not what government is supposed to be for. I still maintain that the very existence of the IRS was one of the first and most dangerous and debilitating affronts to constitutionality in this country, period. So, the justice's order is a major victory for President Joe Biden in his ongoing dispute with Abbott over border policy, which had become especially fraught in recent days after 3 migrants drowned in a section of the Rio Grande that state officials have blocked agents' access to, prompting the administration to further press for the High Court's intervention. 3 migrants drowned. They died. Somebody died recently in a... Xander Max says, I don't care about back home. That place is a lost cause. Yeah, no shit. There's the news out of England is catastrophic. It's terrifying, and I weep for your family, brother. I'm scared for you. I'm scared for your people. I'm also scared for our people. Lost my spot. Oh, okay. So there was a bungee jumping accident sometime in the last month or so, where, the rope wasn't tied off right and it cut loose and somebody hit their head on the ground instead of bouncing back up like they were supposed to. And they died. And that's terrible. It's awful. But you know what? They chose to engage in high-risk behavior. Right? And I have personally made the decision in my past to voluntarily engage in high-risk behavior. High risk, high reward. Right? And here to lurk, it's just a hypothetical. High risk, high reward. Right? I have gone to foreign countries under my nation's flag and waged war on the local population. Engaged in firefights, defeated improvised explosive devices, identified, acquired, and eliminated hostile foreign targets. That's high-risk behavior, and I've done it voluntarily, gladly, enjoyed the hell out of it, had a blast. That's why I have to wear hearing aids now. And yes, my family would have been devastated if I had died doing that. But you know what? I chose to do it. These 3 that drowned trying to cross the Rio Grande, just like the billionaire that takes out a sailing yacht that's pure sailboat without a motor in it and doesn't actually know what he's doing and gets lost at sea. Hey, my heart goes out to you, brother. I'm sorry it happened to you. But you don't justify the expenditure of unreasonable amounts of resources, right? I don't need to see the Coast Guard sending helicopters out to find your ass. You chose to engage in high-risk behavior. Hostile foreign invaders who die in the course of committing fucking war crimes do not get my tears. They do not get my tears. If you're robbing a bank and the armed security guard puts you under, we'll celebrate you on Friday. DRT. Because you got what you should have expected. You chose to engage in high-risk behavior. And this is actually distinct from what I described with the billionaire and the yacht, the bungee jumper, or the soldier deploying to war, right? Those activities are not crimes. What these people are doing, what these foreign invaders are doing as they cross our southern border, is they are committing a crime and an act of fucking war. We should not be treating the southern border as if it is an immigration crisis or a migration crisis. It is not. Immigration is a legal process. What is happening at the southern border is that the entire third world has declared war on the United States of America and is currently conducting a fucking ground invasion, and our government and our military are watching it happen, actively facilitating it. I spent more time talking about the issues than reading through the article this morning. So, a federal appeals court last month ordered the Border Patrol agents to stop removing razor wire along a small stretch of the Rio Grande while court proceedings continue. And the Justice Department asked the justices earlier this month to step in on an emergency basis to wipe away that order, which they did on Monday. Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito, Neil Gorsuch, and Brett Kavanaugh said they would have denied the federal request. Steve Vladeck, CNN Supreme Court analyst and professor at the University of Texas School of Law, said that while the order is a victory for the Biden administration, the delay in issuing it raises further questions. Okay, we're going to skip this shitbag's take. Here too, Lurk says 300,000 in a month. How big was the landing force at Normandy? Uh, I actually don't know that number off the top of my head, but you're getting there. What this really comes down to is a question of constitutionality, the constitutional authority of states and the federal government, and the constitutional separation of powers. And it's tricky because what's happening is the administration, like I said, is not failing to perform their duty, but rather they're going out of their way. They're going out of their way to cause harm. The Biden administration is actually going out of its way to facilitate and improve the chances of a hostile force invading the United States of America. They are committing it. I'm not even sure how to describe it. It's not inappropriate to refer to it as treason, because they're actively providing aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States of America. And let me clarify that real quick. Let's devil's advocate. Let's just assume for a moment that it's unreasonable to refer to Mexicans, Guatemalans, various South American countries, etc. Let's just assume for a moment that it's unreasonable to refer to them as they're conducting this hostile foreign invasion as enemies of the United States of America. Okay, I'll grant you that one for the sake of argument. And then let me remind you, we have identified thousands of military-aged Middle Eastern men who are known agents, members, supporters, and facilitators of ISIS, Hamas, the Taliban, etc. These are known terrorists who have been identified crossing with other criminal aliens. So yes, 100%, absolutely and without question, under the law, by facilitating the crossing of the migrant caravans, the hostile foreign invasion force, the Biden administration is actively supplying aid and comfort to the enemies of the United States of America. That is a cut and dry. There is not an argument to be made against that factual statement. That is, under the law, that is a statement of fact. So it is not a question of law, it is a question of fact. But the constitutional requirement of the federal government to secure the border, while it is failing to do so, comes into theoretical legal conflict with the 10th Amendment, separation of powers, reverting all authorities not enumerated to the federal government and reserving those to the people and the states distinctly. So if the federal government is not doing its job, then the next question becomes, does Texas as a state have the right to control its state borders? I would go so far as to say that unless the state of Texas is preventing commerce from being conducted across state lines with other states and therefore covered by the Commerce Clause, which is way too over broadly applied. I mean, the Commerce Clause that says that the government will keep regular trade between the states is the clause under which the federal government has justified the implementation of drug schedules and controlled substance laws, which are clearly not contained within that purview. But the Fish and Golf says between 6/6 and 6/30 of 44, 850,000 landed at Normandy. So, yeah, that tracks. So we're basically having half of Normandy at the Texas border every month under the Biden administration. So, yeah, the federal government's responsibility to secure the border bumps up against the state's authority to secure itself, being one which is not enumerated to the federal government and therefore reserved for the state. So I would go so far as to say that the 10th Amendment effectively gives Texas the right to erect razor fences around its entire border if it so sees fit, and that an interference with that by the federal government, right? And this is fun, right? One of my favorites to quote is 242, deprivation of civil liberties under color of law. So what you have with federal agents of being sent by the Biden administration to remove the razor wire, no matter what the fucking shitheads at the Supreme Court say, is you have agents of the federal government illegitimately depriving the citizens of Texas of their civil liberties, of their individual rights to life, liberty, property, and the pursuit of happiness. Right? And I'll take that a step further. These hostile foreign invaders, as Democrats are asking people to open their homes to these people, are effectively bivouacking foreign soldiers in the homes of citizens. Sound familiar? Believe it or not, we have an amendment for that. Everybody forgets about the Third Amendment because when's the last time you had your government try to force you to take soldiers in? What's happening right now? That's what's happening right now. So, this decision by the Supreme Court is nothing short of the left-wing captured Supreme Court justices tacitly endorsing the Biden administration's conduct of an intentional hostile foreign invasion on the southern border. He is engaged in serious, dangerous criminal activity, which does not have the collateral consequence of causing harm to the United States. It has the particular intent of causing that harm as its primary motivating factor. And that's where we are. That's what we're going to be voting on in November. That is the vote in November. So, that's all I've got for you this morning. I've got to get down the road. Thanks for watching this morning, guys, on Twitter and YouTube and Rumble. Hit the like and the subscribe and absolutely share. Thanks for watching. We love you, and we will see you tomorrow.